let's change gears a little bit here. And let's get away from the greatest team in basketball history that we all know for a fact in the Washington Generals, which we just spent a lot of time on. And let's go to our hometown 76ers. So we're going to talk with Austin Krell, who covers the NBA and the Sixers for the Painted Lines. Austin, welcome to the show. What's going on?
Hey, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so happy to have you on. Now, let's start today because Al Horford spoke today. And what do you make of Al Horford and what he said to the media today?
Yes, I think obviously the thing that stood out the most about, Horford and the whole situation there was that he kind of admitted and alluded to there being, maybe he wasn't 100% healthy over the course of the season for portions of it. And there had been like some suppositions or even some rumblings that maybe he wasn't all right amongst like the writer's circle. But I think you can really see it in the fact that, number one, his field goal percentage took a 9% dive, from last season in Boston to this season. So he was shooting, below 45% from the field. He was shooting above 53% last year in Boston. And he just looked out of sorts on offense a lot of times this season, whether it be just like missing shots at the rim or his jump shot being, well off. And a lot of times with older players, you can tell if there's a leg issue with, how badly their jumpers are missing. And for him, it kind of felt like it had almost been like a, like a situation where it was out of a movie, how bad he was off at times. And then on defense, he wasn't as spry or as able to, move his feet as he once was. So I thought that, it made sense to what he was saying. But I think a lot of it boils down to also his usage with Brett Brown as well. His usage with Brett Brown hasn't been typically what he's used to. He's been sort of relegated to a pick and pop guy out to the outside, and less post work. Now you saw with Joel out and Ben Simmons in there a lot of times late in the season, Al was more in the paint, and he was starting to look a little better towards the end before the virus. But I think it's about finding those chemistry and those legs, and if he's healthy, it can really be beneficial for the Sixers.
Well, yeah, and so how beneficial, how different can it be for the Sixers, this whole playoff outlook, if Al Horford is actually the guy that we thought he was going to be?
So I think what we've seen is that the reason that it worked so well in Boston was because you had a pick and roll, ball handler and Kyrie Irving, and then you had really good shooting wings, and that really created a lot of space for the Celtics. And Al Horford was able to get comfortable out in the perimeter, set screens, and really get to the basket. And I think with the Sixers, they don't have those wings that can really create their own shot, are really going to shoot high percentage from the outside. Also have a point guard in Ben Simmons who isn't really a shooting threat. So you're trying to find a way to play Joel Embiid and Horford together, and Horford's not a power forward; he's a center. He's not a sniper to begin with, never was, and he's sort of getting older. So I think the fit, while always theoretically it was supposed to be good, and I think we were all sold on the defensive standpoint of Al Horford. The offensive fit next to Joel Embiid was always going to be a question mark, and it was always going to be a sort of a fantasy of, well, maybe we can get them to shoot career highs from the 3-point line. Well, that wasn't going to happen. So I think a lot of it is you can better utilize Al Horford if you separate him from Joel Embiid. And as much as I would like to see the contract pay off and work for the teams, I think it's a lot of money. The fans they deserve to have deserve to see the team succeed. It was a big gamble for a guy in his mid-30s, and I think at this point, with as weird as it's been this season, the best spot for him is going to be coming off the bench and providing sort of that extra oomph as a backup center, but mostly, a power forward, who can, really use the space as well in the paint.
Yeah, so we're talking with Austin Krell, who covers the Sixers for the Painted Lines. And since, we're talking about Horford and how he's gotten healthy, let's talk about Ben Simmons, because obviously he's healthy now. So what do you expect from Ben Simmons these next couple of weeks, and particularly in the playoffs, because the history of Ben Simmons has been kind of mixed in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid concern. When you hear people talk about, the argument with Ben Simmons is that, well, he fades in the playoffs. One thing that I do I'm interested to see if he can pick up where he left off was the fact that he was getting to the line an awful lot towards the last 2 months of the season. He was really getting more aggressive because he was getting more comfortable at the free throw line. He wasn't afraid of fouls as he had been in the past. So he was pushing the pace, being more aggressive, really beating guys to the basket. And as a result, his scoring was up tremendously from what it had been previously in the season. And you also saw in the tail end of the season, the last 2 years of his career, so the first two in the league, his scoring really fell off the map towards the end of the season. Whereas before things went crazy, he was averaging 20 points a game, 18 points a game the last 2 months of the season. So I think if he's healthy, I think that's we're never going to really know the real answer to that. I think if he's healthy and if he can get back to where he was shooting the upper 60s from the free throw line, if he can maintain that aggressiveness, I think it changes the entire way the Sixers can play in the playoffs.
Now, let's talk about the Pacers here, because here's the other thing is obviously the big news today. Victor Oladipo said he's not going to play for the Pacers. So what do you make of that? How does that change things for the Sixers in the East?
Well, so I think, when I first heard the news, my first thought was, no matter how you put it, no matter how you say it, for Oladipo, the simple point of the matter is that if he really believed in his team's chance to win a championship this season, or really thought that they had the pieces, he probably wouldn't have been sitting out. You sit out if you're him because you're coming off a major injury in your legs. He was struggling a little bit when he came back, and I think honestly, and I even texted an agent about this today and asked him for his opinion, and he said, playing was only going to hurt his market. There's more downside to playing than there was upside. He's in line for a big contract. At latest next summer, or maybe he gets extended earlier than next season. But it's a massive blow for the Pacers, and I think the Sixers now you have to choose. Who would you rather play between the Heat and the Celtics? I think both teams, with the Heat with their depth, it gives Miami is incredibly deep, and the Sixers aren't. That can be a problem. Boston, with the fact that they can go small, and the Sixers really don't have that ability to go ultra small. That can paint a problem. Now the Sixers beat Boston 3 times this season, but Jason Tatum left this. When the suspension happened, Jason Tatum was playing on another level, and they hadn't encountered Tatum the way that he had played up to that point. So I think both teams present different types of issues.
All right, so we're talking with Austin Krell, who covers the Sixers for the Painted Lines, and let me ask you this, Austin, because you talk a little bit about the Sixers' depth, and they made a move recently. Talk a little bit about the actual rotation, what you think it's going to be when they get to the playoffs.
So I have thought a lot about this, and I think it's going to vary by opponent. I think Mike Scott has played himself pretty much out of the rotation, and I think he's been more down than up this season. But he's really struggling, and he can't. If he's not shooting the ball well, he's only going to give you toughness. He commits soft fouls. So I don't see an upside to having Mike Scott out on the floor for them. Now I think it's going to be largely Shake Milton, Alec Burks, and Glenn Robinson III as the main pieces, whether they all be coming off the bench. But I think even though Brett Brown alluded to the fact that he was surprised that Ryan Broekhoff signed with the Sixers, I think if you really give him a chance, I think if the fans really let him prove himself, I think he can provide value to this team. He's not going to be like JJ Redick, where you have he's just swinging across the perimeter and he's able to hit shots, fading the different spots. But he's more like before they acquired him, but prime Jason Capono, a guy who could sprint to a baseline, could really move well without the ball, could shoot the ball really well from the outside. And and when he was in Dallas, he kind of fell victim to a very deep team there. Well, not a deep team, but they were deep with a lot of young guys. And I think he was sort of the casualty of them trying to cut to trim pennies off when they were making moves during this season. But I think Ryan Broekhoff can contribute. I think a big part of what the rotation is going to be is can they trust Furkan Korkmaz to provide that spark that he provided so much this season, and then not get played off the court on the defensive end of the ball? Can Matisse Thybulle not be a negative on offense and then not commit ill-advised fouls on defense? But the depth has been an issue for this team for quite some time, and they really do need guys like Shake Milton to step up, Al Horford to step up, and really provide sort of that second pulse after the starters they begin to settle into the game and get their rest.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, Austin, glad you could break down all of that for us. Austin Krell, NBA and Sixers coverage for the Painted Lines. Thanks for giving us a couple of minutes.
Thanks so much, Vince.
All right, take it easy, Austin.